At Fort Bliss, several tanks experienced transmission issues. It was determined that the soldiers at Fort Bliss had discovered that they could throw the vehicle from acceleration into reverse, a tactically advantageous maneuver called the bow tie. Chrysler installed a device that prevented this. The problems with the engine sowed doubt that the turbine was appropriate for use in a tank. Teledyne Continental Motors used the moment to mount effort to convince the Army to replace the turbine with a diesel engine. The diesel argument was convincing enough to persuade the Government Accounting Office, GAO, to endorse the engine. The Army, however, was steadfast in their belief in the turbine. GAO remained critical of the tank program, not least of all for its engine, in reports over the next few years. American press coverage of the XM-1 program was critical of the tank and its perceived design flaws. Some press characterized the XM-1 as being ridden with unnecessarily expensive gold plating. One report falsely claimed the XM-1 unit cost was 3 times as much as the M60. Much of the criticisms of the tank were championed by a series of reports by the newly founded Project on Military Procurement, later renamed the Project on Government Oversight. Beginning in 1981, Project on Military Procurement founder Dina Raza leveled charges that the tank was experiencing excessive cost growth and was too vulnerable. Raza's criticism failed to generate any serious opposition to the program, which maintained strong support from Congress and the Pentagon. American tank historian Stephen J. Zalagar characterized American press criticism of the XM-1 as ill-founded. Zalagar wrote the issues uncovered by the tank trials were not particularly serious. Responding to some of the alleged criticism in King of the Killing Zone, 1989, journalist Or Kelly wrote that the truth is close to the opposite. Kelly said the program ranks as one of the Army's best managed, producing a tank in a remarkably short time while avoiding gold plating and utilizing effective competition. In May 1979, the Secretary of Defense approved the XM-1 for low-rate initial production for 110 vehicles. In October 1979, Defense Secretary Harold Brown approved 352 production tanks for the 1980 fiscal year. The first 2 delivered XM-1 Abrams were debuted at a ceremony at Lima Army Tank Plant in Lima, Ohio in February 1980. General Creighton Abrams' widow christened the tank with a bottle of champagne smashed over the tank's gun barrel. The tank's name had been revealed years before by Army Secretary Howard Bo Calloway. The Army Secretary had preempted the Army's unannounced plans to name the tank after General George C. Marshall. Of Polycoming engine production underpaced tank production for the first 3 years after the start of the initial production model. Its production plant in Stratford, Connecticut, was in poor condition. For the first few years, engines were swapped out between hulls for tests. When one tank was finished being put through its paces, the engine would be pulled out and placed in another vehicle for more tests. At one point, 35 tanks at Lima were idled without engines. The problems were acute that Congress briefly considered establishing a second source for the engine. On the verge of bankruptcy, in February 1982, Chrysler announced the sale of Chrysler Defense, its profitable defense subsidiary, to General Dynamics. The sale was completed in March 1982 for $336.1 million. Chrysler Defense was renamed General Dynamics Land Systems, GDLS. General Dynamics, accustomed to paying its factory workers lower wages than Chrysler Defense, balked at the union's proposed wage increases. Plants responsible for building the M60 and M1 Abrams went on strike in 1985, causing GDLS to miss production targets that year by some 300 tanks. A year after the strike, GDLS was producing 100 tanks a month and making steady progress in eliminating the backlog. Recognizing issues with quality control, GDLS improved factory lines and poured money into research. Defect rates were extraordinarily low by 1986. In February 1981, the Army had upped the number of M1 Abrams sought to 7,058. And it classified the tank as standard as the 105mm gun full-tracked combat tank M1. Detroit Arsenal Tank Plant joined Lima in producing the tank in March 1982, with both plants projected to produce about 30 tanks each per month. 3,273 M1 Abrams were produced 1,979 to 85. An improved model called the IPM-1 was produced briefly from October 1984 to May 1996 and contained small upgrades. It was initially planned to retrofit the M1 and IPM-1 with a longer barrel version of the 105mm M68 gun. In January 1978, a program was initiated to develop an enhanced version of the 105mm gun, the M68A1, as a possible alternate weapon for the M1 Abrams. The new XM24 forward/L55 gun barrel was 18 inches, 460mm, longer in comparison to the XM24 forward/L52 barrel used on the M60 tanks. It has a higher chamber pressure, reinforced breech and a higher muzzle velocity. This plan was abandoned in favor of retrofitting the 120mm gun to older Abrams tanks. Concurrently, the M1A1 with its 120mm gun was standardized in August 1984. In December 1988, GDLS was awarded a full-scale development contract for the M1A2 Abrams. About 6,000 M1A1 Abrams were produced from 1986 to 1992 and featured the M256 120mm smoothbore cannon developed by Rheinmetall AG of Germany for the Leopard 2, improved armor, and ACBRN protection system. Persian Gulf War, edit. As the Abrams entered service in the 1980s, they would operate alongside M60A3 within the United States military, and with other NATO tanks in numerous Cold War exercises. These exercises usually took place in Western Europe, especially West Germany, but also in some other countries like South Korea. During such training, Abrams crews honed their skills for use against the men and equipment of the Soviet Union. However, by 1991 the Soviet state had collapsed and the Abrams would have its trial by fire in the Middle East. The Abrams remained untested in combat until the Persian Gulf War in 1991. The M1A1 was superior to Iraq's Soviet-era T-55 and T-62 tanks, as well as Iraqi-assembled Russian T-72s, and locally produced copies, Assad Babil tank. The T-72s, like most Soviet-exported designs, lacked then modern night vision systems, though they did have some night fighting tanks with older active infrared systems or floodlights, just not the latest starlight scopes and passive infrared scopes as on the Abrams. Some others took minor combat damage, with little effect on their operational readiness. Very few M1 tanks were hit by enemy fire, and none were destroyed as a direct result of enemy fire, with no fatalities due to enemy fire. The M1A1 was capable of making kills at ranges in excess of 2,500 meters, 8,200 feet. This range was crucial in combat against tanks of Soviet design in Desert Storm, as the effective range of the main gun in the Soviet forward/Iraqi tanks was less than 2,000 meters, 6,600 feet. This meant Abrams tanks could hit Iraqi tanks before the enemy got in range, a decisive advantage in this kind of combat. In friendly fire incidents, the front armor and foreside turret armor survived direct upthrusts hits from other M101s. This was not the case for the side armor of the hull and the rear armor of the turret, as both areas were penetrated at least in 2 occasions by friendly DU ammunition during the Battle of Norfolk. On the night of the 26th of February, 1991, 4 Abrams were disabled, possibly as a result of friendly fire by Hellfire missiles fired from R-64 Apache attack helicopters, wounding some crew members. The tanks were part of TF-1-37, attacking a large section of Tawakalna Republican Guard Division, their numbers being B-23, C-12, D-24 and C-66. Abrams C-12 was definitively hit and penetrated by a friendly DU shot, and there is some evidence that another Iraqi T-72 may have scored a single hit on B-23, besides the alleged Hellfire strike. Tanks D-24 and C-66 took some casualties, but only B-23 became a permanent loss. The DOD's damage assessments state that B-23 was the only M1 with signs of a Hellfire missile found nearby. Also during the Persian Gulf War, 3 Abrams of the U.S. 24th Infantry Division were left behind the enemy lines after a swift attack on Talil Airfield, south of Nasrieh, on the 27th of February. One of them was hit by enemy fire, the 2 other embedded in mud. The tanks were destroyed by U.S. forces in order to prevent any trophy claim by the Iraqi army. A total of 23 M101s were damaged or destroyed during the war. Of the 9 Abrams tanks destroyed, 7 were destroyed by friendly fire and 2 intentionally destroyed to prevent capture by the Iraqi army. Some others took minor combat damage, with little effect on their operational readiness. Tank and crew casualties, edit. No. Identification number, type of weapon, date and place, description of damage casualties. 1 Bumper B-31. TF-125 CAV. Mine the 19th of February. Ruchi Pocket. Tracks forward/engine none. 2 unknown number. 1st Brigade, 2nd Armored Division. Mine the 24th of February. Southern Kuwait. Tracks. 1 M1 tank struck a mine in the breach and lost some road wheels. No one in the tank was injured, and the tank was back in action within a day. None. 3 Bumper K-42. 2nd Armored Cavalry Regiment. Struck by pike artillery the 26th of February. 73 Easting. Loader machine gun and left fuel cell destroyed 1 WIA. 4 Bumper B-66. TF-1-41, 2nd Armored Division, FWD. 3 DU kinetic energy rounds, after being hit by an Iraqi RPG-7 the 26th of February. Norfolk Line. Penetration in the hull. Below the turret, ammunition blown up. 4 WIAs. 5 Bumper B-22. TF-1-41, 2nd Armored Division, FWD. 1 DU kinetic energy round the 26th of February. Norfolk Line. Front slope hit. With no internal damage. 1 WIA. 6 Bumper A-14. TF-1-41, 2nd Armored Division, FWD. 1 do kinetic energy round the 26th of February. Norfolk Line. 1 hit in the left side of the hull. Extensive damage by fire 3 WIAs. 7 bumper 31. TF-1 to 41, 2nd Armored Division, FWD. Splinters of 1 do kinetic energy penetrated the 26th of February. Norfolk Line. Hit in the rear left hull none. 8 bumper 33. TF-1 to 41, 2nd Armored Division, FWD. 2 do rounds, after being hit by tow missile the 26th of February. Norfolk Line. Double penetration of the hull 3 WIAs. 9 bumper D-24. TF-1 to 37, 1st Armored Division. Small caliber shaped charge the 26th of February. Assault on Tawakona Division. Impact on NBC exhausts. Compartment penetrated 2 WIAs. 10 bumper B-23 TF-1 to 37, 1st Armored Division large caliber shaped charge, then hit by an unknown round, likely a KE, non-do, the 26th of February. Assault on Tawakona Division. 2 hits, 1 on the rear grills, another penetrated both sides of the hull. Catastrophic damage by fire 1 WIA. 11 bumper C-12. TF-1 to 37, 1st Armored Division. 1 do kinetic energy penetrator, then hit by anti-tank missile the 26th of February. Assault on Tawakona Division. KE round achieved a double penetration of the hull. The anti-tank missile set the storage area of the turret on fire none. 12 bumper C-66. TF-1 to 37, 1st Armored Division. 2 small shaped charges the 26th of February. Assault on Tawakona Division. Small penetration of the left rear side of the hull. Impact on the turret defeated by armor 3 WIAs. 13 bumper C-12. TF-4-8 THCAV, 3rd Armored Division. 73 mm shell. From a BMP-1 the 26th of February. Assault on Tawakona Division. Minor damage to sponson box and .50 machine gun 1 WIA. 14 bumper B-24. TF-4-8 THCAV, 3rd Armored Division. Enemy indirect fire the 26th of February. Assault on Tawakona Division. Damage to sponson box and duffel bags none. 15 bumper C-24. TF-4-8 THCAV, 3rd Armored Division. Friendly Pike the 26th of February. Assault on Tawakona Division. Storage area shredded by shrapnel. Main gun punctured. None. 16 unknown number. 197th Brigade, 24 Infantry Division. Crippled by enemy fire, then destroyed by 2 rounds the 27th of February. Assault on Tallow Airfield. Ammunition blown up none. 17 unknown number. 197th Brigade, 24 Infantry Division. Stuck in mud, then destroyed by 2 rounds the 27th of February. Assault on Tallow Airfield. Ammunition blown up none. 18 unknown number. 197th Brigade, 24 Infantry Division. Stuck in mud, then destroyed by 2 rounds the 27th of February. Assault on Tallow Airfield. Ammunition blown up none. 19 bumper HQ-66. Commander Tank, TF-4 to 64 Armor, 24 Infantry Division. 2 conventional KE or heat rounds from a 100 mm gun the 27th of February. Southwest of Basra. 120 mm gunner's primary sight, GPS, damaged and fuel cell punctured. Sight replaced next morning. Tank continued in combat. None. 20 unknown number. Turret number 5840U. Hull number D10060. 3 conventional KE rounds from an Iraqi T-72 unknown date /location 2 partial penetrations on the rear turret right side, possible fire in the storage area. Cosmetic damage on the turret front due left armor plate. None. 21 bumper a 22. 2nd Platoon, a company, TF4 to 64, 24 Infantry Division. Secondary explosions from an Iraqi T-72 March 2nd. Rumaili oil fields. Storage area devastated by fire. Ammunition blown up. 1 WIA. Interwar upgrades, edit. Following lessons learned in the Persian Gulf War, the Abrams and many other U.S. combat vehicles used in the conflict were fitted with combat identification panels to reduce friendly fire incidents. These were fitted on the sides and rear of the turret, with flat panels equipped with a 4-cornered box image on either side of the turret front. These can be seen in the below image. Similar flat panels also being employed on British Challenger 2 tanks serving in the conflict. In addition to the Abrams' already heavy armament, some crews were also issued M136 at 4 shoulder-fired anti-tank weapons under the assumption that they might have to engage heavy armor in tight urban areas where the main gun couldn't be brought to bear. Some Abrams were also fitted with a secondary storage bin on the back of the existing bustle rack on the rear of the turret, referred to as a bustle rack extension, to enable the crew to carry more supplies and personal belongings. The M102 is a further improvement of the M101 with a commander's independent thermal viewer and weapons station, position navigation equipment, digital data bus and a radio interface unit. The M102 SEP, System Enhancement Package, added digital maps, FBCB2, Force XXI Battlefield Command Brigade and below, capabilities, and an improved cooling system to maintain crew compartment temperature with the addition of multiple computer systems to the M102 tank. Further upgrades include depleted uranium armor for all variants, a system overhaul that returns all A1S to like new condition, M101A, a digital enhancement package for the A1, M101D, a commonality program to standardize parts between the U.S. Army and the Marine Corps, M101HC, and an electronic upgrade for the A2, M102 SEP. During Operations Desert Shield and Desert Storm and for Bosnia, some M101s were modified with armor upgrades. The M1 can be equipped with mine plow and mine roller attachments if needed. The M1 chassis also serves as a basis for the Grizzly combat engineering vehicle and the M104 Wolverine heavy assault bridge. Over 8,800 M1 and M101 tanks have been produced at a cost of US $2.35 $4.30 million per unit, depending on the variant. Iraq War, edit. Further combat was seen during 2003 when US forces invaded Iraq and deposed the Iraqi leader Saddam Hussein, in an invasion that lasted just 27 days. The 20th of March to the 15th of April. M1 tanks proved instrumental in leading rapid attacks against the Iraqi military, as exemplified by the so-called Thunder Runs. Abandoned Abrams were purposely destroyed by friendly fire to prevent recovery of vehicle or technology. Damages by 25mm APD, anti-armor RPG fire, and 12.7mm rounds was encountered. There were no confirmed instances of anti-tank guided weapons or anti-tank mines striking the US MBTs. However, there is some speculation that Kanat ATGMs were used during the Battle of Najaf to knock out 2 Abrams, but Russian officials denied selling the weapon to Iraq. What is known is that the 2 Abrams were struck by unknown weapons, and their ammunition stores ignited. Nevertheless, both crews escaped without serious injury. Some Abrams were disabled by Iraqi infantrymen in ambushes employing short-range anti-tank rockets, such as the RPG-7. Although the RPG-7 is unable to penetrate the front and sides, the rear and top are vulnerable to this weapon. Frequently the rockets were fired at the tank tracks. An Abrams was disabled near Karbala after an RPG warhead penetrated the rear engine compartment. There were 2 reported losses during the Battle of Baghdad, with 1 Abrams being put out of action after being struck by numerous medium-caliber weapons, including 12.7mm rounds which ruptured a fuel bladder stored on an external rack. This started a fire that spread to the engine. On April the 4th, 2 Abrams were destroyed by anti-aircraft guns, while on April the 5th, another was hit by a recoilless rifle and set aflame. After repeated attempts to extinguish the fire, the decision was made to destroy or remove any sensitive equipment. Oil and .50 caliber rounds were scattered in the interior, the ammunition doors were opened and several thermite grenades ignited inside. Another M1 then fired a heat round in order to ensure the destruction of the disabled tank. The Abrams was completely disabled but still intact. Later, the Air Force bombed the tank to destroy it in place, and the Iraqi Information Ministry claimed credit for destroying it. On the 31st of March, 2003, an Abrams belonging to the U.S. Marine Corps drove off the side of a bridge at night, dropping the tank into the Euphrates River and drowning the 4 crew members. On the 3rd of April, 2003, Abrams tanks destroyed 7 Iraqi Lion of Babylon tanks in a point-blank skirmish, less than 50 yards, 46 m, near Mahmoudieh, with no losses for the U.S. side. As of March 2005, approximately 80 Abrams tanks were forced out of action by enemy attacks, 63 were restored, while 17 were damaged beyond repair. On the 6th of June, 2006, 2 of the 4 soldiers in an Abrams crew were killed during combat operations in Baghdad, when an IED detonated near their M102. On the 2nd of August, 2006, an M101 commanded by U.S. Marine Sergeant George M. Ullo was hit by 2 IEDs in Al-Anbar province, fatally injuring Sergeant Ullo. Vulnerabilities exposed during urban combat in the Iraq War were addressed with the Tank Urban Survival Kit, TUSK, modifications, including armor upgrades and a gun shield, issued to some M1 Abrams tanks. It added protection in the rear and side of the tank and improved fighting ability and survival ability in urban environments. By December 2006, more than 530 Abrams tanks had been shipped back to the U.S. for repairs and upgrades. Iraqi usage, edit. It was reported that 28 Iraqi Army Abrams had been damaged in fighting with militants, 5 of them suffering full armor penetration when hit by ATGMs, in the period between the 1st of January and the end of May 2014. Some were destroyed or damaged by militants placing explosive charges on or in the vehicles, highlighting the lack of adequate infantry support provided by Iraqi soldiers. In mid-2014, Iraqi Army Abrams tanks saw action when the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant launched the June 2014 Northern Iraq Offensive. Some Iraqi Army M1A1M tanks were destroyed in fighting against ISIL forces, while an unknown number were captured intact. At least one ISIL-controlled M1A1M Abrams was reportedly used in the capture of the Mosul Dam in early August 2014. The Abrams suffered its first heavy losses at the hands of ISIL fighters against Iraqi-operated tanks through planted explosives, anti-tank missiles like the Kanet, and captured tanks later being destroyed by American airstrikes. The chief cause of these losses was the poor training of Iraqi tank operators and lack of infantry coordination. About one-third of the 140